Welcome everyone to Going Deeper. My name is Elisa and I'm so excited to be going deeper today on this topic of transparency. Here on the show, we go deeper because marriage was not meant to be lived at the surface. And this topic of transparency is one that really impacts every single one of you watching today. Because here's the thing, how you're able to show up and be transparent in your marriage impacts every single facet of how you and your spouse relate to one another. So I'm super excited for my guests today. But before we do that, I want to give a big shout out to this week's sponsor, Position of the Month Club. And Position of the Month Club is a great place for you to find creative new date ideas, to spice up what's going on in the bedroom with a new position every month, and to connect with folks just like you who are looking to make their marriages better. So check out everything that's going on there at positionofthemonthclub.com. Now, my guests today are an incredible husband and wife team who are transforming marriages around the world. Aaron and Jennifer Smith are the founders of Husband Revolution and UnveiledWife.com, respectively. And together they inspire and encourage husbands and wives all over the world to have a God-centered marriage. They've been blogging and authoring books for over 6 years now. They live in Central Oregon and have just recently celebrated 10 years of marriage and are the proud parents of 3 incredible little ones. I get to see their pictures all over. And so Jennifer and Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us. This is an honor for us too.
Well, I'm so excited, and especially when I'm talking to a husband and wife couple, I love to hear a little bit about your courtship and your marriage story, so that the folks know a little bit about where you've been to get to where you are today.
You remember the details better.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we were going to a Bible study on Monday nights when we were very young. I was 15, 16, and Aaron was 18, and we just became really close friends, really good friends. And right before I turned 19, we started dating. And just a really exciting time because Aaron basically told God, I don't want to just date anyone. I want you to tell me who my wife is, and then I'll date and marry her. And so I knew that. And so him asking me to be his girlfriend was like,
it was a loaded question.
Yeah, I knew that we were going to be married soon and someday. So that was really exciting. And then we got married January 2007. And like you already shared, we just celebrated 10 years of marriage. So that time went by really fast. I can't even believe that. It's been 10 years.
Yeah, we're at 20, almost 21 years. And I will tell you that second 10 goes even faster than the first.
Well, it feels like this year is going by really fast right now. So I just felt like the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, it's almost over.
Don't say that. Don't say that. We all have so much more to accomplish this year in terms of marriages. Yeah. Now, for those that don't know your story, this topic of transparency really plays a huge role in it, because it was not, you guys have not had the rainbows and unicorns and happily ever after from the get-go.
No,
we had a pretty rough start, which I know that is pretty common. But one thing that kept us from getting healing or help or growing past the things we're dealing with was the fact that everything was hidden. No one knew us. So transparency is the beginning of the story for everything that we're doing now.
Yeah, and just to let your people know kind of what that hardship looked like in the early years. Aaron and I both saved ourselves for marriage, and we were really looking forward to intimacy in marriage and growing in our relationship in those deeper places. And starting out that first day, it was just very difficult. Sex was super hard for me, painful. And so for the first 4 years of our marriage, we could not enjoy sexual intimacy. And so that just amplified every other conflict that we faced in marriage. And so when we say it was a rough start, that's what we mean. And
it was 4.5 years of no sex and bitterness and anger towards God and each other, and amplifying all the other areas of our life that were inflamed because of this.
And I think a big part of why we became so frustrated and bitter over that issue in our marriage is because we had these expectations of what marriage would be like, because we were saving ourselves and pursued purity in our relationship. We thought everything was just going to happen naturally and be good. And when we faced, the opposite, it really crushed us.
Yeah.
So you just used a gigantic word there that I know a lot of people don't necessarily like to associate with marriage, but it's the expectations, right?
Yeah.
What were the, and you alluded to it just a little bit, but if you can put some meat on the bones, what were those expectations?
Well, for me, so I struggled with pornography my whole life, and I had this unrealistic and lie of an expectation that marriage would fix that. I felt like I believed that my problem was something happening to me because I had no outlet, and that was totally false. So that was one of the first expectations. And we both going into this, Jennifer was aware of my problem, and
I also believe that marriage would.
She believed it would fix it too, and we both thought, like, oh, okay, so if I have an outlet and I have a healthy outlet and we can be together, then I won't need that.
So with sex being our first conflict in marriage, that obviously did not work itself out, and so we also
amplified.
We had a lot of difficulty around that issue in marriage, which just was terrible.
Yeah.
And an expectation that I had for marriage was that it was just our love was gonna deepen and grow and unfold naturally. I never knew that there were roles that we played and responsibilities that we had to intentionally pursue oneness in marriage. I didn't know
what oneness looked like.
Yeah, and what oneness looked like. I didn't know that I had to open up and actually give him my heart. I knew that, but I didn't know what it looked like. And so I think that learning that process was a hard one too.
And I had actually, it's so funny. Not that I'm perfect. I know I'm not perfect, but I actually believed I was pretty perfect.
Okay.
And that sounds cocky, but more of like I don't argue with people. I'm pretty easygoing. I'm a pretty good guy. So I figured going to marriage like that, I was like, we're probably not going to ever fight.
This is going to be awesome.
I legitimately believed these things. And all of a sudden I'm married and
we bickered 24/7.
And I can't do anything right, and I'm wrong, and I mess up on a lot of things, and I'm like, what? I feel like I was a kid again, like being disciplined all the time. And so that was an expectation that was totally false. Thinking that it'd be.
Yeah, and my goodness, there isn't a person watching this that doesn't have expectations. I mean, even if they've been married for a while, they still have expectations. And Jennifer, one of the things that you said right there was that you had to give your heart to Aaron, which is really, kind of what we're talking about today in terms of transparency. But, that sounds like a Hallmark card, right? We all kind of have this idea. We get married, we do the I do's. I'm going to give you my heart.
Yeah.
But you both have alluded to the fact that it's actually a much bigger action than the Hallmark card. Here you go. I love you. We're going to be happy forever, ever.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I learned in that process of what it looked like to give Aaron my heart, to truly give him my heart and let him in to my world, and I'm learning still, is it actually started in my relationship with God. And I realized that my relationship with even him was surface level, that I wasn't willing to be really intimate with God. And so there was this thing happening, this transformation happening in my relationship with God, where I would sit down to pray, and I'd go to those deep places that I always tried to avoid because of pain and the emotional hurt that comes with some of those things. And I would just start talking to God about it. And I realized that in that process, it made it less scary to do that with Aaron. And so it was in our 4th year of marriage that I remember the moment that I sat down on the edge of the bed and I said, we need to talk. And I think it was like an hour or two that I just divulged everything. And I told him things that I hadn't told anyone, things that probably didn't even matter, and other things that were really big deals. And I explained to him where they came from and, why I was so afraid of them. And I remember just weeping through the whole thing, and you were so gracious in your response towards me in that moment. And we just talked, and I felt like that was the most intimate we had ever been in our entire marriage. And so when I say give my heart to Aaron, it's this idea of like letting down the walls and not keeping anything hidden from him, letting him know who I really am. Sometimes it can be easy to say, I love you, but when you know everything about someone and you still choose to love them, that's powerful. That is so powerful.
And so that was the beginning of our transparency journey is can we and will we give all the areas of our heart to our spouse, that I don't keep secrets from her, and I share the dark thoughts that I have, and what happens when we do that, like you shared like history, things that you haven't thought of in years, and you're like, hey, the Lord's bringing this to the surface, and this is how, things that happened when I was younger. This is the way I think. This is things that
some of
I
it
learned.
Some of it came without understanding. Like, I don't really know why this is an issue in my heart, but this is how I feel about it, and
And then I did the same thing, sharing, how long I've struggled, the depths of some of my struggles, the ways I think, frustrations I've had with her, frustrations I've had with me, just full disclosure from our hearts, which most people never do. There's things that we hold even, and we're afraid to even admit to ourselves, which is something that we're still learning, especially about, things that we deal with. We never actually divulge to ourselves the truth of what's happening in our hearts.
Because then we have to face the reality of it.
Because then we have to face it.
And I just want to clarify, I do mention the first time that I really, was transparent with my husband in marriage, but it's also an ongoing process. Me and Aaron have weekly, sometimes daily conversations about, things that are going on in our lives. And so I just want to encourage everyone listening that it's not a one-time event. Being transparent in marriage is for the rest of your life, and it's a beautiful way to be intimate on a conversational level in your marriage.
It's really it's the only way to be intimate. God uses the word know you. He wants to know us. And yes, he knows us because he's omniscient, but he wants us to give him the information. He wants us to give him who we are and to be honest and transparent and real, so that he can and we can recognize what needs to change, and he can actually change us. And then that happens in our marriage. That when you are open with me and honest and just share, because you love me and because you want to be known by me, and vice versa, we actually can truly become one.
Yeah.
That our thoughts start to align, our ideas start to align, our confessions start to align, our sin starts to go away, and we don't let any areas have darkness.
Yeah.
We let the light into all the areas, which is very, very scary. You never know.
Emotional.
I can imagine, because, Jennifer, you said that it was at your, roughly 4.5 years marriage. And Aaron, you said in the opening that it was the first 4 years of no sex. So I can just imagine the emotional weight. I'm thinking of so many couples that you guys work with, that we work with, that would have gone to that point, would have literally been packing their bags. Like that conversation when you said, can we talk?
Yeah.
Would have been, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
We were close to that. That was.
And I can see how some people would be so afraid of a situation like that they would leave out of convenience,
running is easier.
Or to avoid facing it. But it's so much better to face it. If I can encourage anyone listening right now, it's face it and allow your spouse to respond to you. And depending on the situation and what's being shared, it could be a really intense conversation, or you could be really surprised at, what happens. I don't know. Is that encouraging to hear?
Yeah.
Aaron, Jennifer made mention when she was, sharing how she literally poured out her heart, that you were incredibly gracious in that space, in that time, in hearing whatever it was that she was sharing with you. What was it in you that enabled you to be able to do that? Because I can think of a lot of people that, we all hear things from our spouses, and grace is not always our first response. It should be, but it's not always. So what allowed you to be able to do that? Because that's like the secret sauce.
There was a few things that allowed me to do that. The first one is I, at that moment, desired that our marriage would work. I desired that we wouldn't end. I wasn't looking for a way out. So my heart already was turned towards her. Whether I'm hurt or whether I'm frustrated or angry or bitter, I had already resolved I didn't want this to fail. So that was the first thing.
You were hoping for reconciliation.
Not hoping for it. That was just my heart was like that. No matter what, I want this to work. So having my mind set to that, my heart set to that, because I oftentimes we can hear it in people's voices, and we even heard it in our own voices, just waiting for the exit door. waiting for the opportunity to be like, well, see, there you go. Now I get to leave, and I don't have to feel ashamed about it.
Mhm.
I didn't want that. So I all the doors were shut. It was like there was nowhere to go. So that was the first place, being in the right place, mentally and spiritually with this. The second thing is recognizing that when Jesus says, unless you forgive your brother, you will not be forgiven.
Mhm.
And so just having this right perspective of my own relationship with God, that I don't actually have a right
Humility.
to hold anything against my wife. I don't have that right. I don't have, I'm not righteous enough. I'm not God. So if God tells me, if Jesus says, you must forgive, and if you don't, you won't be forgiven. So just making sure, I think in that moment, I know in that moment, my heart was just in this place of like, whatever she says isn't going to give me a right to hold it against her. And I want us to work. So those were the two the main factors that allowed me to say, okay, like seeing her heart, understanding also that the only reason she was divulging these things is because she loves me and that she wants to see us work too. So, just making sure my eyes are in the right place.
Well, and that's huge that you were able to recognize where Jennifer was coming from. That these things weren't being said in anger, they weren't being said to hurt or to wound, but they were coming out of a place of, I love you, and I'm trying to figure out how to make us work. And this may have been a barrier.
Well, it was a barrier because we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
Right.
We were, like she said before, as surface level as our relationship with God was, is how surface level our relationship was.
Yeah.
So if I don't know the dark areas of her heart that doesn't even let God know, like we could never be one. We could never work on that intimacy. And if God's asking that of us, He's given us our marriages as a tool to teach us that on this level. So
you guys have been married for 10. This was the first 4. And Aaron, I think you had mentioned it earlier in the interview that you said, sometimes it's just easier to run. Why do you guys think that we get into this place of running away or, putting up those walls instead of going into what you two have obviously accomplished, which is just a depth to your marriage that a lot of people put up a barrier to?
I would say that, I know for me, it was a lot easier to hide.
Doorbell.
I think for me, it was a lot easier to hide because I was scared. I was afraid of what it looked like on the other side of telling him my heart or sharing with him things that I was struggling with. And I think it's that unknowing that can keep someone from wanting to go there. And so escaping or running away or quitting, I think that those things seem easier, but they also forget about the painful consequences or circumstances that happen after the fact of that choosing that way, that path. So I struggled for 4 years, hiding and keeping as much as I could from him. But eventually when I was transparent with him, we experienced so much freedom in our relationship, so much healing, being able to know that we can actually trust each other. There was a respect there and just a love there that was able to be built from the foundation up.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to ask, where did you guys learn to do this? I mean, did you see other people do, or was it just kind of like this aha moment where you opened your Bible one day and you read, Jesus says to know, and you're like, I need to know my wife.
So there was a couple things that happened. So one thing that, like I said earlier, that had kept us in this, cycle for so long was one of the things that one of the lies that we believed, that we were the only ones dealing with it.
Total isolation.
And because we weren't talking to people about it, and there was a couple of times we did open up, and those people looked at us like we were crazy.
When you say talking about it, he's referring to
our struggle with
no sex. So not being able to have sex.
But we also didn't talk to anyone about the other ancillary issues that came out of that.
Sure, but the only thing that we were thinking about that we knew for sure we never wanted to talk about was this idea of sex.
The sex.
It was embarrassing for me, and I didn't know how to navigate that.
But there was a couple times that we did bring it up early on, and those people looked at us like, "You're young, you should have no problem. That's weird." And so that solidified in our hearts. We're like, "Oh, we must be the only ones. We're broken, and no one will understand." And everyone that talks about their marriages, all of the honeymoon night stories, and like just broke our hearts even more. We're like, "Oh, I guess we're the only ones." So that kept us in the cycle of being hidden. So again, the transparency, not just on the inside of us being transparent with each other,
community.
we weren't transparent with community. And that kept us believing a lie. And what happened was we started going to a marriage ministry at our church. And
about 3.5 years into marriage.
Yeah. And we're sitting down at this table, and all of these other couples that are young like us and different life stages, some have kids, some don't, are just sharing how messed up their marriages are. And we didn't say anything for a few weeks, like a few sessions listening. Going. We just listened.
But then we'd go home and we'd be like, "Can you believe so-and-so?" And then we'd start talking about these issues of marriage. And that made us look internally.
Well, we realized that we weren't the only ones.
Yeah.
And then the moment we opened our mouth at the table, people were like, "Oh yeah, we dealt with that too." Or, "Oh my gosh, can we pray for you?"
There was this refreshing sense of like camaraderie and like transparency. It was like a light was turned on, and we're not the only ones standing there. There's a room full of people that have experienced the same thing, and now that they know where we're at, they can encourage us. Or before we weren't letting them.
They started. It went from us opening up and others opening up to hanging out until midnight with a couple, just crying with them and talking with them and laughing with them, and so seeing the example of other people sharing and being open, which is where the idea of unveiled wife came from. Which is that was what God did with us, is he took the veil off of our faces and said, "Okay, now you can see clearly." And so that level of transparency is what taught us. It wasn't like we had some sort of inherent gifting and skill in this. I mean, the Holy Spirit revealed to us what it looks like to confess.
I also like to tell people that it was these other couples, it was their courage that spurred on our courage to share with others and with each other and with God all of what was going on in our hearts. And so, yeah, it was an incredible experience, and that is what taught us how to be open with each other.
What an incredible tribute to the power of community and to choosing your community, because I think we've all had those encounters with people like you mentioned at the beginning, when you're newly married and you're having these problems and everybody's looking at you like you've got three heads and you're like, okay, we're not going to say another word to anybody. We're just, because every marriage, everyone watching this, there's been something in your marriage story that you've kept under wraps because somebody told you it wasn't safe. Or somebody gave you the impression that it wasn't safe to share. And what I'm hearing from the two of you is that don't stop trying to find a community where it's safe to be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
The scripture that I think of often, and a lot of people avoid this scripture, but it says, "Confess your sins to one another so that you'll be healed." And then it says, "The prayer of a righteous man availeth much." And so the question is do we want to be healed? And this isn't confession for salvation. This is confession for healing. That I am this way. I want you to know that, and I want to confess it, and I want to repent of being that way.
Because I want to change.
Because I want to change, and I want to be healed. We avoid confession altogether. We don't want to confess. Like, we didn't want to confess we were dealing with brokenness or pornography or being out of order in our roles or bickering all the time, which we've been called out on several times because we're in community. But that we kind of forget the tools and the gifts that God's given us to help heal us. And one of them is transparency, is confession.
Confession. And that's powerful because we don't like to look vulnerable. We don't like to look weak. We don't like to look like we don't have it all together. It's why I love your messaging on unveiledwife.com and on husbandrevolution.com is that you guys you're not just transparent with one another, you're transparent with everyone that God puts in front of you, right? It's not just this like, okay, well, we're just going to put up a shiny, happy face. Yeah. And I remember the first time, Jennifer, I saw you in a conference and you're just sharing your story. And there are women, like literally this church full of women just bawling their eyes out because they're like, oh my gosh, that's me. Because you chose willingly to create a safe place where others, and it's what you've done in your community, to take off their masks instead of going along with what the culture does that says, you know what, everybody should look happy, put on your smiley face.
The Bible calls that hypocrisy. And what that is we wash the outside of the cup and with no regard to the inside. And personally, the reason we're so transparent is I want the inside of my cup washed. I want to be ever growing closer to God, ever being transformed, changed, made more pure.
Better for each other.
Better for my kids. So I'm totally excited to be transparent and open and confess and be known, because it keeps the darkness out of me. And that's what we're supposed to do, is like shine the light in the darkness.
Well, and you used a word, I was trying to think, you used a word earlier in the conversation, Aaron, about oneness, and that you didn't know what it meant back in those early years. And what I see, even watching the interplay between the two of you during this interview, it's like finishing each other's sentences. And Tony and I joke all the time, like, we don't have ESP, there's no, like, but there becomes that unity of mind, body, and soul, when a couple is vulnerable, when they are transparent. And if there was one tip, one suggestion that you could give to folks on how to start that process, because it's a process, it's not going to be like they, have, the Smith magic fairy dust that you sprinkle over their marriage and poof, we're suddenly transparent. But what would be the first step for somebody watching?
I would say this, because the kind of oneness that you're talking about and that we're talking about comes from both of us surrendering to God's will. And what happens is our minds start thinking the same way. Our thoughts are on the same things. Our motivations are from the same place. And they're not from us internally. It's from God. So I would say for anyone is surrender as an individual, your will to the Lord. Open up his word and see what he has for you and start walking in it. And what happens is you start walking in that, and the Bible says, like, a wife can potentially save her husband by her conduct. And it says the same for a husband. If there's unbelievers, if the spouse is unbelieving. But think about the ramifications for two believing spouses when they both surrender and start walking with the Lord. Because then my wife's not trying to be one with my will. She's trying to be one with the Lord's will, and I'm trying to be one with the Lord's will. Therefore, our oneness is founded on him. So that would be my one tip, is pursue the Lord in everything. And
I would follow up with a second tip, and that's just talk to each other. You can't get anywhere without actually verbalizing where you're at, because your spouse can't read your mind. Your spouse can't guess. And so just have those conversations and take away the distractions, get a babysitter if you need to, if you have kids, and make it an intentional point to have deep, meaningful conversations. And at first, it may not be that deep. At first, it may just be sharing where you're at and how you're feeling about your relationship or about circumstances.
And to add to yours, one thing that I don't remember if you wrote it somewhere, or if you said it to someone, but if you intentionally set a time, like if you both commit, like, hey, let's make a time that we're going to be open, and intentionally make it a safe place, and say there's going to be hard things said. The reason we're divulging this is because we love each other. And so let's navigate this knowing that nothing I'm saying right now, I'm not coming to hurt you, like you said earlier, and vice versa. And so it's like let's be open and honest and go as deep as you want, or not, and do it over and over and over and over again until it's easy.
Well, I love that you established that as a ground rule, because it's woven throughout the time that we've spent together. Just this idea of coming to one another in love, which ultimately, I know, just listening to the two of you, comes from the love that you've received from God.
Yes.
Because it's so much easier to outpour what we've received than to try and scrape up the remnants of whatever we've got on our own, and then try and give like the leftover crumbs to our spouses. And so I'm really hearing the power of faith and the power of being in God's word to create that level of transparency in your marriage, to create that safe space, because you know that you're not doing it in your own strength.
Right.
Because in our own strength, I think most of the time we'd probably not create a safe space
Yeah.
for ourselves. As we close, I always like to ask, especially my married couples, is there a phrase, a verse, a mantra that the two of you live by?
Extraordinary.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very similar to One Extraordinary Marriage. We've always clung to this word extraordinary. It was kind of like a promise to each other that we would have an extraordinary life, and
that we wouldn't settle for ordinary, that we would.
And even through the really, really hard times, we would experience something really awesome, and God would remind us of
some of the most extraordinary things we've experienced were during the hardest years of our marriage.
Yeah. So we love this idea of like just letting God be the one who orchestrates this extraordinary in our marriage. And sometimes it's really normal at home playing with our kids, and it's extraordinary. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So extraordinary marriage is what we'd probably share.
Well, I absolutely love that one. Absolutely. Can you, Erin, Jennifer, can you just remind people the best place to connect with all that you're doing?
You can connect with us on unveiledwife.com or husbandrevolution.com.
If you want to see internally some live videos or pictures, especially of our family, follow at Instagram at Unveiled Wife and at Husband Revolution.
We post pretty regularly on them, on Facebook and Instagram. So.
Yeah. And I will say, since we do follow you guys, first of all, your children are absolutely adorable. Mm-hmm. And if you're watching this, make sure you follow them. Everything that they're putting out, guys, it's top notch. They wouldn't be on the show if they weren't. And I just want to say a big thank you for spending this time with us, for really sharing the power that transparency has to really cultivate marriage on a whole nother level, to take this idea of oneness from being just kind of this great idea to being something that actually gets accomplished in marriage. And I want to remind each and every one of you that this is a place where this is a topic that you can go deeper this week with your spouse. Take that first step. Like Erin and Jennifer said, set aside a time, understand that you're coming there, both of you, in love, and allow your spouse to go as deep as they can or as they want to. So make that your going deeper this week. And join me next week as I talk with John Anderson of Growing Love Network. Love you guys.